You're listening to NorthWoods Church Matters, a podcast of NorthWoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins.
All right, well, welcome back to the NorthWoods Church podcast. My name is Rachel Bland, and I am our women's ministry director and our girls student ministry coordinator. So I get this lovely pleasure of working with our students here at NorthWoods. And today I have one of our students on. I have Bekah with us today. Bekah, say hi.
Hi, guys.
And Bekah's going to share her story with us today. And more specifically, we're going to talk about what the Lord has done in Bekah's life. So before we kind of get started and dive into some hard questions, tell us about yourself.
I am 15 years old. I attend Harrison High School, but I do MPA. So I go to Central in the morning and then go to Harrison in the afternoon. I am in marching band and I play the clarinet.
Woo woo! That's what I played, so makes it even more cooler. So you said you're 15, so you are what in high school?
A freshman.
Okay, so let's kind of start off with talk a little about how you came to know Jesus.
It started one day during church and something clicked. So later on in the day, at night, I had asked my mom to explain it to me a little bit. And then I had told her I wanted to come and know the Lord. And she was like, you know, this is a big step in your life. So then I just said, yeah, I know. And she explained that. And then it happened there and it kept growing and growing.
So how old were you when that happened?
I was probably about 6 or 7.
So I love it whenever someone like you comes up in our world because you grew up in the church, but even in that process, you still came to this realization that you need Jesus and that you are a sinner and that you needed him. So that is so cool. So what is life like now that really since that time that you made that profession of faith? What's your life been like with Jesus?
Since I've been in the Word more often nowadays, it's like I learn more things stick out, things make sense. It's just better, I guess. Around 6th grade or so, I had the opportunity to go to Crossings Camp with you guys. And that was pretty...
Going again this year.
Yes,
finally.
This year. That was really a game changer because I had never really been in the Word that much at one time. It was always maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But with the church services and the singing and all the verses you learned, it made sense to me and I understood how important it is. And with that, we had talked about discipleship one night. I was interested in it. So I had asked if I could be discipled. And then it's just been growing since then.
Okay, so for someone who is unfamiliar with the word discipleship, explain what that means.
So discipleship is when you're getting taught about the word by somebody else. So whenever I started being discipled, my knowledge grew more. It was like I was being taught more things like that didn't stand out to me before. We went through the NAB Press discipleship book. They were easy books to start out with. They didn't pressure you to do more than you could. It was just very simple. And I guess with that, life had gotten much better. It was more exciting. But then one thing happened that made me so mad. I was so mad.
Just one?
Well, multiple things, but that one big problem at the time.
Okay.
It was COVID. COVID made us go out of school. It stopped band, and it just made everything tumble down.
You're growing in your faith. You're coming to an understanding of things that you didn't necessarily know before. And then COVID happened. What changed, I guess? Besides the obvious, you said no band. Why was that such a big deal?
Well, it would have been my first year of marching band, and I was super duper excited because it had been talked about. Our show had been released, and then it was a dream that had been crushed.
So it was pretty disappointing.
Yes. Discipleship had stopped since COVID was newer. They didn't really know anything like how fast it would spread or anything, so we didn't want to go out and meet at some place because people could have COVID and not know it and spread it to you.
What happened with your relationship with the Lord then at this point?
So,
just so in case you didn't catch that, she did a little giggle.
So it went really downhill. Before I was in the Word all the time, and then I stopped because I was mad. It was just a big problem. Like, everything just was worse. I didn't trust him at all. It was really bad.
I distinctly remember, because we were meeting for discipleship, sort of like trying to come off the cusp of things are slowly starting to open back up. And I distinctly remember we were sitting outside, and for whatever reason, it was blazing hot out.
It was super duper hot.
And we were sitting there and we were talking about this, and you were telling me just how upset you were over the last 6 months that had basically happened. And I remember you telling me, you were like, yeah, I'm basically mad that I can't control everything.
Yeah, nothing's in my power. And some people know how I am. I like to control everything and make it my way. During that time, I wish I had control over stopping COVID because I wanted to go see my friends because that had stopped, and I love seeing my friends.
In case you don't know, Becca's kind of a social butterfly.
Sometimes.
With people she knows.
Yes. But I wanted to control where I could go. I couldn't go anywhere because we were quarantined. You couldn't leave the house pretty much. I wanted to control being able to go to marching band. I wanted to control everything just being normal again because it was a big change.
And you wanted your way.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's the key part about all of this. And to your credit, I really feel like a lot of us, when we go through these times where everything starts to change, it's really easy for us to just stop getting in the Word. It's easy for us to stop getting in the Word because we are so upset, we're so mad that things aren't going our way, that we're like, okay, well, this isn't working, so I'm just going to continue on my life without it. And I think that's something that a lot of people fall into. So once things started going back to semi-normal, then what happens in the story of Bekah?
So, of course, I was super duper excited about being able to go back to school. And it was just like normal life again before COVID, but with the mask mandate, social distancing, it was still a little bit different. And marching band started up. That was the most exciting thing ever because I got to hang out with band kids again.
Yeah.
And I had to relearn how to play my instrument because I kind of forgot. But it went pretty well for, I'd say, a couple months. I was super duper happy. But then my mom and dad had gotten COVID. So then I was quarantined and stuck in my room all day long. And I couldn't see them either. I had to stay in my room. I had to clean the house, keep a mask on when I was around them because I didn't want to get sick.
Right.
But it was okay. Quarantine was okay. I was kind of bored. I had watched a lot of movies. Ate a little too much food. But then, probably a week into it, my dad got put into the hospital because he couldn't really, breathe very well.
Yeah.
And then he was in the hospital for, a week or so. And then it kind of all kept tumbling downhill. And eventually, he passed away. It made me even more mad. I was still a little bit mad, but not as mad. And it kind of just triggered something inside of me.
Yeah. Well, very reasonable at that on some level. There was a lot that was not going right. And then it was just when things start getting good, everything crashes. So explain going back to school even. How was that afterwards?
It was just really awkward. No one knew what to say to me. They didn't know how to really talk to me because no one had that happen to them before at such a young
right.
They didn't know what to do.
And how old were you when this happened? You're a freshman now, so you were...
I was 14.
So you were in...
8th grade.
8th grade. Okay. What's your relationship with the Lord at this point? Where's God in your life?
It was kind of like I was pushing him more and more away. I believed that I did something wrong and this was God's punishment towards me. I always found myself asking the question, why? Why did this happen to me? Why did he choose this for me? It was just always why.
Yeah.
And eventually it got so bad that it built up a wall between me and him. I didn't want to see him at all. I didn't have anything to do with him.
Probably didn't want to be around church people.
Yeah, no.
Probably didn't want to come to church.
Yeah, because I just didn't want to hear what they say because everybody just they ask you, how are you? And it's the same genuine question. And it's just over and over again.
And you probably don't really know how to answer that at some point.
Yeah, there was feelings, but feelings that you can't describe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so then you built up a wall. But at some point, we're sitting here having this conversation because something's changed. What happened?
So during that time of when I was distancing myself, I had started back up discipleship. And the thing is, people have to understand that it doesn't take a couple days for all this to get over. It takes months or weeks.
Probably years.
Yeah, years. Because there's just feelings that you can't ever get rid of. But it's just going through daily life and learning more and getting back in the Word. Little things just started to build up. I was trying to rebuild my trust with him.
So what did that look like? I'm trying to remember back to those moments when we sat down together. Those moments were pretty dark.
So as we were meeting, one day we were meeting for discipleship, and I had realized over time that I had built up this wall, and I admitted all the things that I did. I had pushed him away. I didn't have any trust. I acted like he wasn't even real, that he just was an imagination.
Yeah, things that the Bible teaches aren't actually true.
So then we had gotten some napkins out and we had drew a door. And on the front of the door, we had put everything that I did that distanced me. And then on the inside, we had put everything you knew about God at the moment, like him, everything the Bible said about him. Whenever you were ready, you turned to the door. And then as you turned to the door, the feeling I had was a weight kind of was lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to hold anything anymore. All the feelings and stuff got lifted away from me because I had kept things for so long that I was just quiet and kept to myself. And I just didn't want to share my feelings with anybody.
Yeah.
But after that, it took like a week or two, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of just, I was more outgoing, more happy. I felt like everything was kind of back to the way it was before all this had happened.
Life around you is not normal.
Yeah, life's not normal.
But you and God was back to normal in some sense. So when you were saying when you're ready, opening that door, explain that. What was that process like?
You have to realize someone else can't realize it for you and try to talk you into it because that's not going to work. It has to be you who does it. You have to take control.
And so you made a choice.
Yep.
So what was in you that pushed you to just say, I'm going to, on a napkin, I'm going to open this door and I'm choosing today to trust the Lord regardless of the weight around you? What pushed you to make that decision?
It was kind of realizing all of the things that I had on my shoulders or that were weighing me down. It was just like either I had the choice of either keeping it to myself or giving it all to him. And I just feel like one was worse than the other.
One of the coolest things for me is that I feel like you got to this place of the way I've been living my life for the last year. My way's not working. When you were opening that door, you were choosing to trust him, even though you had no idea how it was going to work out, just because you holding on to it, you carrying that weight, it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So if you could tell Bekah as an 8th grader something then, what would you want to tell her?
Don't keep everything to yourself. It just adds on to the weight and makes things worse.
Are you really trying to say that you don't have any control?
Yeah. I don't like saying that.
I don't think any of us like to say it, but it's definitely the truth.
It's true. Yep.
Yeah. Anything else that you would want to tell yourself?
Trust his plan because he's always in control. Even when you think you're in control, you are not really in control of everything.
Well, and that reminds me of Isaiah 55, verses 8 and 9. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And I think that's one of those things that you've really gotten to see play out in your life. Even being young, your ways didn't play out the way you thought it was going to go, but God's ways are still at work and he's still working things for our good. And slowly but surely, we're figuring out how all of that works together. But I think one of the coolest things was, I think I asked you a question at one point and I said, will you still trust God even if it never makes sense? And you looked at me and you go, that's the hardest yes I'll ever say. And that was one of those moments where I was like, I learned so much from you, just watching you say yes to the Lord consistently, knowing that, yeah, it doesn't have to make sense. And that was the coolest part for me because I was getting to see this light bulb go off in your head and watching you just say that and then watching you say, it doesn't have to make sense, but I'm going to choose to trust him anyway. I need to learn that even for myself. And I hope that's something that can be an encouragement to everyone who is listening. So let's talk about the people who are listening, right? You went through this whole section of your life where you weren't in the Word, and now you're consistently in the Word. So how would you encourage someone who isn't in the Word to be in the Word?
Being distanced or away from God is just not worth it. It just won't end up good. Life gets so hard. You can't continue on by yourself. You always need someone by your side. And that can't just be people around you or family and friends. And you need God to be by your side.
So then you need God. So for you, when you say you need God by your side, that looks like you getting in the Word, right? So what does your time with the Lord look like?
So usually, typically at night, because in the morning I can't focus. I'm a night owl. So at night I do a daily devotional book, and it's more of like a journaling book. So they give you this passage that you read, and you have to copy it down. You go through and highlight words that stick out to you and mark and what things you understand. And then they go through and give you more in-depth questions to test your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to dig deeper.
So how do you know as you're reading what sticks out to you?
You don't know like who's pointing things out to you, but it's random things. Sometimes they're like bold, how you'd make something bold in like a paper to stand out.
Mm-hmm. It feels like that.
Yeah.
It's like the Holy Spirit's tugging at your heart saying, Bekah, pay attention to this. So when something sticks out to you, when it, as you described, it's bold on the page, do you write it down? Do you put it on a Post-it note? How do you remember that moment when you really heard God speak to you?
Sometimes I'll highlight it in my Bible, or I'll box it in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make sure that it's boxed in with a color. Because if it's just with a black pen, then it's like I did it myself. But it just makes things easier to remember and see.
Is this relatively like recent where you've really been able to discern or hear from God?
It was relatively recent because the first time it happened, it kind of scared me.
Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember the actual verse it was, but it was this one word that I never wanted to hear ever at all. But it was just there.
What was the word? And wait, was this shortly after the door thing happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So this whole door thing happens and you leave, and then what?
I was reading the passage and things started sticking out. And it was like super scary because that never happened before. I'd never experienced anything. It was just like different.
So words were sort of jumping off the page. Okay. Yeah. So what was it that stuck out to you?
It was this one single word. It was trust, because it reminded me of all the things that had happened in the past and how I'd built up my relationship to trust him again.
And was that the first time that you have experienced that moment where something so clearly you felt like was from the Lord?
Yeah, it was a different feeling.
And I think that's one of the coolest things that I love listening about your story is that sometimes God takes us through the wilderness. He takes us the way that's really hard. And ultimately what happens is we get so much closer to him because of it. Our relationship's deeper with him, and we can hear his voice louder than we ever could. And I love that. I just think it's so cool. Even though the hard stuff is really, really hard, being able to have a closer relationship with the Lord is so sweet. Even though life may be sour, the Lord is so good to us. So love that. Okay. So why do you know that you need the Lord even on good days and not just the bad days?
So even on the good days, it just shows you who God really is. It's like, it shows you, even with the bad days, they turn into good days by the end of it because you get taught things, lessons. And it's just, he tries to help you change your attitude towards it. And he makes you be a better person by the end of it. He just teaches you little lessons along the way.
You're slowly but surely growing to be more like Jesus. Yes. That's so good. I love it. Okay, so you want us to do some fun questions just to kind of wrap up the podcast? Okay, so fun questions. What is your favorite fast food place?
Chick-fil-A, obviously.
And how many times a week do you go?
Oh, 2 or 3, I think.
Yes.
Too many.
Girl after my own heart. Okay, chocolate candy or fruit flavored candy?
Chocolate.
Chocolate all the way. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
And beach or mountains?
Beach.
Yes. And you have a fun trip planned, right? Yes. Coming up. So very exciting. You're going to
Disney.
Yes. So that is awesome. So Bekah, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
I hope you enjoyed it and it wasn't so crazy. And that wraps up our story for today. And thank you for sharing it with us. And I hope everyone is just encouraged. Do you have any final thoughts to whoever is listening?
Just don't hesitate to move in on your problem. Just make sure that you handle it or it'll just keep growing.
So good. All right, guys, that's our podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.